Welcome to PSYCOW, home of all things horror. I'm Kyle.
I'm Stacey, and we have a very special guest today, Mr. Andrew Vanden Houten, president of Moderncine.
What is going on, guys?
We're super stoked to have you on the show.
We are. This is a pretty amazing moment for all of us right now.
I mean, you know how big of a horror fan we are, and especially for you and the woman, and I mean, we got inked for this.
Yes. I'm set up for December, but it's going to happen.
I'm completely geeked out, man. Like, when I found out that I had two fans that were fans of our movies and what we do, who are, like, so into the iconoclasm of that woman character and just committing to it on flesh, I knew that this was going to happen, where we could all talk one day on the phone and soon to meet, hopefully, as well.
Yes.
That would be amazing.
We actually talked about it. We have to, we just added Stacey into our little Jucow universe of podcasting. We have like 6 different shows. We have to do like a investor ski trip. You should come.
I'm into it. I love it. I think it would be appropriate, you know, God willing, everything works out. We can go to Park City this year with one of our films. It would be cool to see you guys out there and have a couple drinks.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Love to. Yes.
So let's jump down into questions, and I want to interview. It's gonna be fun.
Let's do it.
You want to start off, Stacey?
Sure. We have a list going on, and how much we actually cover of that list might be a little crazy, but we're going to try our best. So our first question was, what attracted you to cinema, and what films do you credit for your influence?
You know, it's a good question. I think for me, I've always been a fan of. It's funny, when I was a kid growing up, I was such a geek when it came to action movies, and I always got really super psyched about watching, Terminator and anything that was like, big studio action film. I was like, Friday nights, where's the action adventure section in the video store? And I would just like jump right into it, whether it was Bruce Willis and Die Hard, and I was always into action movies. And then I've always had an affinity for the horror genre, because I was like, every time Halloween would come around, there'd be like the edited versions of like Friday the 13th on like television. And it would just be like just disturbing enough where you'd be like, oh my God, this is crazy. And you'd be hiding under your mother's like sheets.
There's nothing better than edited horror movies.
That's true.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic how horror movies become more epic the more you cut certain things out, and you just become more disturbed seeing less. However, I have to say, like, a big influence on me, I remember being in Florida, actually, when Silence of the Lambs came out, and we went into the theater, my friend Nick Calico and I, to watch the film with his mom. Took us, actually. It was like a
yes,
play date on the weekend. I was down with them on a family vacation, and basically his mom, literally 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we're in the theater, she grabs our hands and says, all right, we're gonna go, guys. It's so funny. And it's like, I've always had moments like that. There was another moment when Pulp Fiction was in the theaters. Tarantino's like mass, breakthrough films in so many ways. And again, I was in a theater with my mother and at the time my stepfather, and we watched the movie, and I remember them like literally like wishing we hadn't gone into it. They were like, this is horrible, and I loved it. I was like, this is amazing.
I don't think there's anything that horrible in that movie besides the Gimp.
Yeah. I was probably, it's funny too, because when I was probably about 10 or 11 years old when, maybe I was, yeah, probably around that age when we went and saw it. And, it was one of those movies like now, I guess 10 and 11-year-olds are seeing a lot more crazy films. But back in the day, when they took me to see that movie, it was still in the time where it was like not acceptable to
Right.
see certain kinds of films. So,
Yeah, I wasn't
I was,
allowed to watch horror movies until I was really probably a early teenager, but she let me watch Halloween every Halloween, and that kind of got me going with horror movies.
it's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that, Friday the 13th and then seeing Halloween, obviously seeing like, seeing Nightmare on Elm Street, like all of the, and then right up until Scream came out, like I was always into those films. I think Cronenberg definitely had the biggest influence on me.
Yeah.
I've always been into very traditional effects as much as possible.
Right.
And so I think his stories are they're interesting, right? He has all kinds of. I mean, Wes Craven does the same thing where I think you can read into like what the genre, it goes beyond this genre in terms of the subtext of what they're trying to deal with. And I kind of really dig that the horror genre has such a, multiple angled kind of, meaning to so many of the movies that we watch. And at the end of the day, I really do like to just be scared when I watch a horror movie. I love suspense too. I think suspense is awesome. Hitchcock, the master of suspense.
Oh yes.
Hmm.
When you say Cronenberg, I mean he has every element of horror in everything he does. I mean every movie he does is completely different than the last one.
Absolutely. Even History of Violence,
Yep. With
Yeah.
Videodrome and Scanners and his remake of The Fly, I mean everything was completely different than everything else.
Totally. Totally.
So, do you like producing or directing more?
It's funny. I'm a natural born producer, so I love producing because it's kind of like my strong suit. But directing is the kind of thing where I challenge myself and it forces me to have to really like be 110% creative all the time.
Right.
So I enjoy producing because that's kind of, again, where I get to work on a lot of projects and with a lot of different directors and creative people. Where when I direct, I really have to just focus on one project at a time. And I think the more projects I'm doing, I'm realizing that I really do enjoy working with a diverse group of directors. And I get what it takes to make a director happy and what it takes to actually make a film work.
Right.
Enjoy but I love directing when I find the right material. I think as I get older, I'm realizing that again, the producing is definitely where I'm able to do a lot more, and I've been enjoying that.
I saw The Woman first, and when I went back to watch The Offspring, it's a very different movie, but
Yes.
it's really amazing. It's probably it's my second favorite modern cinema movies. Not just
Yeah,
because
it's
of The
what,
Woman, but just because of who is I
right.
don't know, it's just the way it was done. I just love it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I wanted to get a real raw feeling with that film, and not like I wanted to feel kind of like a throwback to the '70s kinds of
It's the
slash.
best decade.
Yeah,
Hmm.
totally. I mean, Deodato's Cannibal Holocaust, all those films that came out in the '70s were just so gritty, and I tried to, tried to find a way to work with children and work with all the subject matter that was kind of taboo and weave it into something that, yeah, is being made contemporary, but still has that kind of that grit to it. And Michigan was just a great place to kind of grab that timeless feel.
Oh, the way I saw The Woman was kind of like an I Spit on Your Grave, but she's feral. she's
Yeah.
yeah, she's not just a an attractive woman living in a house. She was out in the woods, and it's kind of, I mean, to me it was kind of like that. It was because I Spit on Your Grave is probably one of the best horror movies ever, especially in the '70s, and it seemed like a real cool throwback to all the '70s movies, like you said. In Rising Stars, we watched everything you've done, and I want to ask one quick question about that movie. Who did your hair in Rising Stars?
Oh, geez, man. I think I had gotten really drunk the night before and woke up and just walked to set with that hairdo. I
I
don't. Someone.
loved it.
It's amazing. It's perfect.
I was like, I knew you were in there, and she had saw it before I did, and when I was like, that's Andrew. That was awesome.
Thank
I
you.
was I honestly watched it for Lauren, who was in The Woman, and I
Right.
saw she was in that, and I was like watching it, and then I saw Andrew pop in, and I was like, oh my god, this is a dream come true, both of them in the movie.
It's awesome. Um, yeah.
Uh, so let's see. How about Jack Ketchum books? What lures you to the Jack Ketchum books?
Jack Ketchum is definitely by far, one of the most interesting authors, I think, in terms of, the amount of time he's been writing. But for some reason, I think the relevance to his stories has kind of really come out in the last 10 years, if not even since I think that when we made The Girl Next Door, the film, I think it really shed light onto his ability to use the genre in order to make a point again and have, comment on a social issue that was obviously incredibly, depressing and terrible. Something's terrible in terms of child abuse, in terms of everything that fundamentally The Girl Next Door is dealing with. But yeah, I mean, in short, I think Jack Ketchum is just one of those writers who feels like a classic writer. Whether, if you were reading, a Steinbeck, or you're reading, F. Scott Fitzgerald, like, writes with the same skill as a writer of that level, I believe, and he does it obviously with a tendency, to lean towards the macabre and the darker side of things, to the extreme at times. But I think that's what I really was drawn to, is wow, there's this profound, great writer who's got this awesome voice that's really telling and disturbing, and has relevance, and he's completely worthy of having films made of his work. So it was a really kind of, I'd been recommended and turned on to him by Bill Miller, who I was producing a bunch of movies, and he was shooting a bunch of movies for me at the time. And as it would be, I have done 3 movies now with Jack Ketchum. So, it was definitely a fruitful introduction, and it's been paying off ever since in terms of the exposure of the projects, and for him as well, just being able to help get his name out there and expose him more as a writer.
I can watch pretty much any horror movie, but The Girl Next Door, it makes me cringe.
It is rough.
I don't mind a torture movie. I don't think there's, it's the story around the torture movie, but that movie, it had me. I'm like, oh my God, I can't watch this.
I don't mean to sound so nasty or whatever, but it is one of the roughest rape scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
Trying to sit through that, and honestly praise to Jack Ketchum and you guys for going to that level, because honestly, that's what grips me in a movie, is seeing something that you're kind of not expecting to see, and it really rips your heart out. That scene really, really rips your heart out.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I can't even watch that movie.
Yeah. It's rough. I mean, Blythe did an amazing job.
She's awesome.
I felt like, it was actually, I was watching a snuff video like that. I felt like someone was in the room just taping this the entire time. The way, she nailed it.
Definitely think that Blythe Othfarth could have been in Rising Stars too. And one thing, by the way, to that, for me, all the Jack Ketchum stuff we've done, like, I love it, but for me, The Woman was like, all right, this is the first chance where we can take a character from like Offspring, and even in Offspring, just like traditional horror film with a Ketchum type of story,
That was honestly the next question I was going to go to. Was I have to give you guys credit for finding Pollyanna McIntosh and putting her in The Offspring, and she really shined in that movie, and you guys did want to give her her own movie with that. And what really made, I just wanted to know, ask what really made her stand out beyond other characters in the film for The Offspring.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, she came and auditioned for Headspace, and when she came in the room, it was like, oh, Scream Queen, like, holy shit. You can't ignore, you can't ignore this woman. She's so strong. She's so, tenacious, and it just immediately grabbed my attention, like gripped me immediately. And I was like, I gotta work with her. So we worked with her in Headspace, and every film I would do, I'd keep in mind, like, is Pollyanna right for any roles? Gotta use her again. I finally read Offspring. I was like, oh my God, I gotta send her the book. And she read it, and she's like, holy, I get it, and I want to do it. And then when she did the film, I remember screening it for Lucky and Jack Ketchum, because my best friend from kindergarten was like, dude, when you make that movie, don't kill her at the end like in the book. That character, she's amazing. And he was right. And so I told them, look, guys, I want you to like see Pollyanna on a screen and see what we've done with her character, because whether, Offspring becomes, this cult classic film or not, Pollyanna, there's something going on with this character that we need to really consider exploring. And they saw immediately what I saw. And after that Kodak screening, it just led to writing this novel and writing this script that I would then go and produce. And it was just, it was really, really cool.
I think she did an amazing job, but she and Lucky. I would love to talk to both of them. Just give them props because they did an amazing job. Lucky's one of my favorite directors, even though he didn't have, terribly too many movies under his belt. What he's done with like May and with The Woman, he really does stand out as a great director.
He does. He's definitely a director to look out for, and he's also, I see his name going down as a classic director with no problem.
Now, Lucky is going to be one of these guys that, we're all going to be talking about 20, 30, 40 years from now. Even people be talking about him 100 years from now. I think, for the first time in the world, holy shit, now I'm in the major leagues,
Right.
Like these films, you're getting a lot of recognition. You're kind of making a splash in the horror arena. And then all of a sudden you come together. And I don't know that he's ever had, quite a producing partner like myself or like our company, but it was like the perfect timing for us to meet because he was kind of jaded about the industry. I was kind of getting fed up with I needed to find other collaborators to go to that next level. And so when we met, it was like the perfect timing.
Well, I think that's cool. I think he definitely needs to get as much producing as he can because I want to see what he has. Because he's just like you said, he's going to be something we're talking about 20 years from now. He's just hit the tip of the iceberg of what he can do.
Yeah, and what's great is that I feel like everything that we've been doing together, he's been really able to have the creative vision and creative respect and control that he needs to have to make the movie he wants to make.
Yes.
It's like, look, I mean, like when I direct too, it's like I want to have the ability to make the film I want to make, and I don't need a producer telling me what to do. Like, I want to make the art that I want to make. Yeah, I have to be conscious of what the budget and the resources are. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that I feel that the movie that is told, that is shot, edited, and ultimately distributed is a film that actually represents my vision. And I think that he is totally able to get what's in his mind on the screen. And that's what's exciting for me working as a producer with him, is that when I say, hey, what movie do you want to make? And he tells me the movie he wants to make, I know I can give him the resources and the tools to do that, and that it will turn out exactly like he tells me it's going to. And that's pretty unique.
Well, Lauren Ashley Carter, we talked about just a second ago. She played Peg in The Woman. Did you meet her on Rising Stars, and was that what made her stand out as Peg? Did you meet her there and just you wanted to put her in The Woman?
The moment she came into audition for Rising Stars, after she left the room, I look over at Bill Miller, who was working with me at the time, and I said, Bill, she's got to be in a horror movie. Like, a horror movie, like, immediately. And, it was funny because the moment that I said that, like, The Woman started happening after, well, actually, I take it back. It took about a year or 2 years after the Rising Stars that The Woman happened, but I always knew that Lauren was someone I would put in a horror movie. So when The Woman came around, I, Lucky came and he saw Rising Stars in New York, which was awesome. He's like, yeah, my nieces and nephews love this film.
Yeah.
And ultimately we ended up casting her. He liked her. He saw what I saw, and that's the thing I love about Lucky. When I really see something in someone as an actor, because he respects he respects me as a director as well. So when I say, hey, this is an actor we should consider, he absolutely takes the time to think about it. And not every time does an actor that I suggest get into a film
right.
that they're doing, but that was a great situation where it worked out. And since then, we put Lauren, she's actually the star of a new movie called Jugface, guys, which is the one that, is going to hopefully premiere out at Park City this year. And Lauren is actually, she's the star in it, and it's probably one of the most unique gothic southern horror flicks that's been made, for a long, long time. So I'm, not to toot our own horn.
No, we can't wait. I mean, we know when you say that it's going to be, because, I mean, you know how big of a fan we are.
Yes.
With Lauren, though, if I'm not a big fan of remakes, but if they ever did when a Stranger Calls remake the right way, I feel like she would be perfect. She actually, her eyes just remind me of Carol Kane, like those big scared eyes. Like it's perfect for a horror movie, like you said.
Yeah, she's got those Betty Davis eyes.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I think that would be great. So, and she's cool. You know what I mean? She's not like she's not a pretentious crazy, flighty person. She's very, very kind of dedicated and committed. And when she does something, she really comes in and she wants to do the best job and she delivers, and she has fun. We all had so much fun making our last film together. All the films we've done, we had a great time. But Lauren's one of those people that I'm like, you see something in someone when they come in an audition, they get that part in that film, but you see something else in them and then you give them that shot. And when they actually, take that opportunity and deliver, it just, it's the best feeling. It's like, and that's what, again, that's what producing is so much about, is seeing the potential in people and being able to help put them in a situation where they can shine and bring that out. And that, that's pretty rewarding for me, as a filmmaker.
Definitely.
And with Jugface, that was actually another question we had. Sean Bridgers is back as well.
Man, Sean is in best form in that film. My God, he talk about a 180 too. You couldn't find a more different character for Sean Bridgers in Jugface. I mean, it's like, is that the same person, really?
Yeah, I'll be excited to see that, because honestly, I hated him. I don't hate him he did an amazing job as a character, but hated him in The Woman.
As a person in the movie.
Yeah.
What if I told you I think you're going to actually find him endearing and probably like him in the new film? Would you believe me if I told you that?
I will believe you. I'm going to put a lot of faith in it.
Oh, Stacey, I think it's going to take a lot of work for a lot of the people who've seen The Woman to actually, like, let me say this. It's not going to happen in the first 15 to 20 minutes of the movie, and I get it, It's going to take...
I'll give him a chance.
In the first 15 or 20, he's going to be raping and doing exactly what he did. But then you're going to like him later.
Exactly. We get it out of the way really early on in that film.
Yeah, there you go.
That's okay. That's okay then. And then another character as well was Shyla, and you guys met her at Texas Frightmare. And were you guys a little nervous working with her, knowing that she hadn't really had any experience?
So what a great question, man. What a great question. Because I honestly told Lucky, I said no at first. I had actually said, no, let me get you some auditions out in New York for this character. Because I'm not confident she's going to be able to do what we need her to, need her to do. And, I'm a little nervous. She's not she's never acted. You met her at Dad and you met her at a convention. She's cute as a button, but I'm not sure.
So adorable.
She is.
We auditioned a bunch of actresses out of New York who were kids, and I was like, none of them were working. And then I went back and actually looked at the audition again later, that I had already made a judgment on earlier. And after having seen all the other actors audition, I noticed there was something so fresh and affected that it was like, oh, wait, there is something here. Lucky totally was right, and I was wrong. So I actually called Lucky up, and I said, let's do it. Let's go with Shyla. You're right, and I was wrong. And that's the thing. It's like, you got to just trust, you know what I mean? You got to trust your director, but ultimately you also, I think, need to, take the time to go through the process. Because ultimately the casting process will reveal who the best person is for the part. And she hit it out of the park.
Oh, she did amazing. She brought kind of like this comic relief, but she also brought this innocence to the movie. With all this bad stuff going on, she was kind of like the innocent moment in every scene she was in.
Right.
She is like the ideal, untouched, precious, kind of figure in the film. They kind of are always curious as how can she, not be affected by everything that's going on? And the direction that's given to her is just so consistent. It totally works.
Like she's been shaded from everything. Like she has no idea of anything going on in the world at all.
Right. It's all normal.
She just knows her music.
Her.
Yeah. I think that's what made her perfect, though. I mean, she's the complete contrast of everything else in the movie, which it needed that. You had to have that one person in there that was just cool with doing whatever.
Yeah.
Totally.
You've mentioned working with Lucky, and that's got to be awesome because we definitely want to talk to Lucky. How was working with Angela Bates? Because to me, the two of them are like a power duo with Roman and May. And a sick girl they did. They seem like a power duo together. How's it working with both of them?
She's a pro, man. They work together. They can just look at each other and understand each other. So there's a lot of unspoken direction that goes on, and it's fun witnessing that. I kind of got to that place with Polly when I was on Offspring. I would kind of just trust her so much that we kind of wouldn't need to have long conversations about things. And I think that's what's wonderful about watching Angela Bettis and Lucky work, is that they have a shorthand, and the starting place for each performance is so deep and so far along. And Angela is such a phenomenal performer that she can really strike a chord with just a look. Her presence tends to just on screen take over. And I love witnessing, the scene when they were shooting. I remember they were shooting the scene where she gets hit in the kitchen towards the end of the film.
Right.
And it was crazy because I jumped so high because I didn't expect her to do what she does. In terms of when she cracks before he punches her and everything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
More, Chris. And she has that big moment. It was like she did that, and I just, goosebumps. Like I literally jumped, and it totally caught my attention. There was a lot of moments where I just didn't know what she was going to do, which is so awesome when you watch an actor and they're just so unpredictable. And it's just watching the performance is like, the most exciting thing. Because it's a testament to, you don't need 3 billion special effects to, give somebody the same kind of excitement that you would get, when an actor gives you that great, true, raw emotion. And she's able to deliver that.
We'll send this over to Michael Bay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think he cares less about performance. I think that's about right.
Yeah, you nailed it on that one. All right, so the next question we had was about actually Zach Rand, and he's a face that I know I've never seen before. And then you have him again in Brian Keene's Goal. Is he another face we could see again and again for Moderncine?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's an interesting actor. I think Zach is one of those kinds of kids who surprised all of us. I mean, we did all these auditions, and he definitely, he was like one of the last people on the audition tape. And I remember watching it with Lucky and Lucky's dad, actually, and we're all like, oh my God, he's awesome. And so we hired him for The Woman. And after doing that, I just couldn't help but put him in Ghoul. So, I think if we find the right part for that guy, I'd love to keep working with Zach for a long, long time. And he and his mother are just good people, really supportive of independent film, supportive of like what we're doing. And absolutely, he's the kind of actor that is only going to continue to grow and become better as he gets older and continues to get life experience. And I mean, he's already, I remember he was kind of figuring it all out on The Woman, kind of, what does this person do on a set? I don't even think he understood what I did on the movie.
Right.
He was so funny. And so he's kind of like figured it all out over time. And, I mean, as far as the film world goes, and I think he's going to grow, certainly as he gets older and continue to just be one of those faces that we'd like to bring back, but also that we'll see in other stuff too, for sure.
I thought it was funny on IMDb. I remember looking at his profile, and there's a picture of Pollyanna like giving him a hug from like at one of the premieres, and I just thought it was really funny, thinking, she chopped you in half with a lawnmower blade.
So right.
Speaking of that, thank you so much for the lawnmower blade. That thing is hanging up on my wall. I'm gonna get it autographed by everybody.
Hell yeah! No,
That's what I've been doing too. I met Robert and Alan. They were at Horror Hound. And they were both really, really great.
Kurtzman, man. Kurtzman and Tuskies. Those two guys are, I got to tell you, man, ever since I started working with them, the effects in our films are just so much better, So, although I have to say I did enjoy working with Jamie Kellman. We were kind of spoiled on our first picture back in the day.
Right.
On Headspace, Jamie's got on to do. He had done a bunch of stuff then, and he's still killing it. But, yeah, man.
Well, I mean, with Headspace, you worked with it was Dee Wallace and Olivia Hussey and Udo Kier, and I mean, you worked with so many. How did you get so many great people on your first movie?
I don't know. It was weird. Like, I think in retrospect, it kind of was one of those things that, you don't appreciate it as much until you kind of have some time and you get away from it all and you look back and you're like, holy shit, like, fucking Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet. I had Juliet in my first movie. Like, what the hell,
Right.
Like, yeah, I got lucky. It kind of happened because the writer, it started with William Atherton. He was friends with one of the writers, and the writer vouched for me and said, hey, you got out of Emerson. This kid's been family friends of ours for years. You should, talk to him about doing this movie. And so I got Bill Atherton interested, and then I was in LA screening a short film at the LA Film Festival called Surveillances. And after the movie, this lawyer came up to me and said, yeah, I represent a lot of interesting clients. I think your movie's amazing. Love to introduce you to Udo Kier. And so Udo Kier's lawyer introduced me to him just after randomly meeting him at the screening. And I remember going up to Udo's place in LA and by Echo Park. And, I walk in and kind of low key place, kind of hidden up a hill, in LA. And
Right.
the hills there. And he's like, yeah, so tell me about your movie.
He's so creepy. Like, it doesn't matter. He could just say, I'd like to order a hot dog. And I'm like, oh God, you just gave me chills.
I need to take a shower every time you look. Udo's, you're like, oh God, clean myself. I've sinned.
Yeah. So what spawned the awesome soundtrack for The Woman? We bought I know Stacey has it too. We bought the vinyl just because we loved it. I love collecting vinyl records, and when I saw that The Woman had the soundtrack on vinyl, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But what inspired you to do just one artist for the entire? Was that you or was that Lucky or?
Lucky had basically said to me, like, look, listen to this kid's music. He and I went to college together at USC, and he was in New York hanging out with me. And I listened to the music, and I was like, damn, he's good, man. Definitely. Like, Lucky's like, yeah, I can see him kind of like really being part of the whole production and like having an influence on the movie. And I was like, that's interesting. So how are we going to do that? And Lucky's like, well, I kind of think he should be writing music while we're actually making the film.
Oh wow.
Right. And so basically we ended up having a composer there, singer-songwriter, who was using the actual, because we shot a lot of the film in a high school in Massachusetts. And so we ended up using the music room.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
And recorded, like, using their instruments, recorded a lot of the music in the high school music room. And every day or two you'd get like a whole slew of new songs, new ideas. And it became this really kind of influential part of the process. It was really cool. Sean Spillane is I met a lot of these kind of new soul brothers, if you will, on this movie. Sean and I have worked now on Jugface and Ghoul, and I got to work with the editor Zach Passero, the editor of The Woman, on a couple of movies. So Lucky had a really interesting group of people, and I was able to introduce him to my production designer, Krista Gall, who worked on Headspace and a bunch of other movies we had done, including Offspring, and she's a rock star, so Lucky was able to kind of team up with her. But, the people he introduced me to, most notably, obviously, Sean, have really, really kind of been unfound until I feel like The Woman. And so now all of a sudden, like, Sean has he was in a very successful band in the past, but as a solo artist, like, to be able to do something like The Woman, it really gave him the leg up on not only saying, yo, look, I can write great songs, write great music, but I can also implement them, and Lucky, of course, had a lot to do with this, but implement them into a movie in a very unique and original way. And I think that's kind of what resonates is when you watch that movie, and Jugface has this too, by the way. I think the Ghoul soundtrack is just, and it's kind of silly and fun, and, it fits the film perfectly, but the way the music he's doing for Jugface right now is so kind of just haunting at certain points and really just elevates the narrative in so many ways, and it makes the world that you're kind of evolving in, just expand continuously. And I felt that way when we actually did. It's pretty awesome stuff. So, I mean.
Well, music in movies is really important, obviously, but I love when you use bands and singers instead of just like score. It just seems more personal to me. And the song "Distracted" in the Woman, where it was just a shot where Peg is sitting on the in the football field crying, and the camera kind of pans down with her as she falls down. Just that one shot alone, it had me like that. I think that was towards the beginning of the movie, or maybe the middle, I believe. And just that one song fits so perfectly with what was going on. And all the songs did. And that's why I had to buy the soundtrack. I don't ever buy soundtracks.
I rarely do too, and the fact, like, when you listen to that soundtrack, not only there's songs in there you can relate to, but at the same time there's songs that definitely remind you of certain scenes in that movie that are very iconic for that movie.
Right. So the woman part 2, Stacey, you want to take that one?
Sure. Is it real? I feel like it's almost a dream come true if the woman part 2 happened, and if it did, would it involve the same cast and Lucky again?
You know, I have to say, like, as you know, like, because of my origination with, like, Ketchum and working with him on Offspring and everything, like, I have a personal, this is kind of my pet project in
Right.
terms of something that, I've really, really wanted to just see continue. And Lucky, obviously, he's a fan of the franchise and the idea of a franchise. I personally think what I would want to do, moving forward with the franchise is certainly, obviously, Pollyanna. There is no franchise without Polly, so she's interested potentially to come back for sure. But also the characters at the end of the movie, yeah, I would love to bring all the characters that exist at the end of the film, Lauren and Shyla, and poor little Fockett, Alexa. I'd like to see them all come back together and do something for sure. And I think a guy like we're talking about a few different directors. One director is a good friend of mine, Larry Fessenden, he's also an actor. He acted in Jugface most recently, and he's one of these kind of filmmakers that I've always been a fan of. He made a film called Habit back in the day, which is kind of like a vampiric tale set in an urban atmosphere in New York back in the 90s, and wrapped around a love story. I would call that the most avant-garde version of Twilight.
Oh.
It's fantastic, and it's so lo-fi. It's just awesome. And Larry's just one of these interesting voices in contemporary horror cinema and genre, genre storytelling, that I think he'd be a perfect guy for it. And I've talked to him. He's definitely expressed some interest. We're not, we don't have a deal or anything agreed to yet, but he's a guy like, if not him, someone like him is what this franchise needs, which is why Lucky was perfect, right? Because he's such a unique take on things.
Definitely.
And I think the other thing is, the woman really, in many ways, symbolizes, in my, not to get too heady or anything, but I do think she symbolizes the retaliation against so much of the modern construct and what contemporary society kind of reveals and holds for so many of us.
Right.
So I think having a director who can kind of, not so overtly, but certainly in a way where we can convey that thematic element shown through a story and really reinforce those ideals and ideas, I think it'd be a lot of fun. And so, I think Larry's got a unique voice in that he definitely is always so ecologically conscious in his ecology and the atmosphere and environment. And, there's something very important to him in his filmmaking and all his movies, tons of horror movies. He's commenting on that. And I think the woman is the quintessential kind of icon for not only the first female horror icon, to really potentially have the chance to break out in a way where it's like, hey, you've got Freddy, you've got Jason, but now you've got the woman, and in doing that, she has a lot more complexity. I think the female mindset's a lot more complex. I think so much more to deal with there. And so a guy like Larry would be able to potentially bring that relevance to it, I think, and heighten it, which would be really cool.
These kind of movies are all about people who look at things differently than your typical horror movie director. Like, a lot of people do cookie cutter things, and I like the woman was just a big thing for me because it was so different, and it was just like, I don't know, it was like, it was nothing I'd really seen before. And I guess that's why I just enjoy the movie so much. I get tired of the same movie just redone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Have you guys been able to see Home Movie, by the way?
I was about to talk about that.
Okay, cool. So anyway, yeah, I'll let you guys continue then.
Actually, I'll throw one. We can go to Home Movie real quick. I was actually going to ask you well, I guess I was just going to bring it up because that movie was amazing. I kind of got tired of hand cam movies, And that movie was completely different than any hand cam movie I'd seen. It actually creeped me out. Like, I don't really get scared during movies, but those kids just, I don't do kids.
Yeah, it's something with kids.
Yeah, anything with kids and then how they just randomly appear behind you, it gets me uneasy. But what made you want to produce that one?
Well, that Chris Denham was the star of Headspace.
Right.
The guy who directed that film, and he's actually one of the lead actors in Argo, which is really cool.
I saw that online. I didn't know that. I saw Argo and I didn't even recognize him.
Yeah, no, he transformed himself, and then of course he was in he's done a film with Tony Gilroy, and he's in the Bay. Was it called The Bay? I think
Right.
new film that just came out. Barry Levinson did, which is kind of funny because if you look at the artwork for The Bay, it's so similar to the Headspace artwork.
Right.
For the new director's cut we just put out. But yeah, man, no. So I mean, Chris basically was a friend of mine after Headspace, and I was like, he sent me the script, and I was like, this script is awesome. Let's do this thing. And for me, I just loved his whole idea and the exploration of like nature versus nurture, and are kids just born? Are people just born evil, or is it something they're they learn, and so it was a really interesting filmmaker, interesting voice, and Chris definitely has in that film demonstrated what a great script with good actors can do, with just a single hand camera, video camera perspective.
But that movie really was. I was surprised at how great it was because as soon as I saw it was hand cam, I was like, oh boy. But then it just took me. I can't think of one hand cam movie in the past 5 or 6 years that was actually like that chilling and actually scary. Because everyone talks about the paranormal activity and all that crap, but those movies aren't creepy. It's like this movie had stuff going on the entire time instead of an hour of boring shit and then the ending has a big like jump. The whole home movie, just the entire movie had chilling stuff throughout the whole film, and I'm glad you guys put that out. That was amazing.
Yeah, and again, I mean, the reason I brought that up and just said is because in terms of the woman and what the woman does, as far as social horror goes, I think again, like a lot of the films we do, we try to get into people. Why, it's not about necessarily the ghost or the scary, ghoul living under the cemetery. We did make that one this year.
Right.
But films are really the films that I love that we make. My favorite films that we make are the ones like Home Movie and The Woman, and where there's really a social, girl next door. I mean, it's about people. People are, ultimately the scariest, thing out there are people, because the horrors that happen every day in the world. You turn the news on for 10 minutes or even 10 seconds, and or watch Oprah for 5 seconds, and you just have week,
That's what I've been saying that for years. Everyone keeps asking me who my favorite horror movie villain is, and I would say someone that's actually, an actually person. It's people are scarier than anything any movie can make.
Absolutely.
So I think Stacey, she had a back to The Woman, I guess. Well, we're gonna be talking. The Woman's our movie, so
Yeah.
sorry to jump around so much.
No, it's good. I'm digging it. You guys definitely you've done your homework, so it's exciting. I have to make a lot more movies now, so you guys can keep watching them.
You got to keep coming on the show, yeah. You got the question, Stacey?
Yeah, I actually wanted to go back to another question for the Offspring and the Woman. From the Offspring, we do see the woman as this very, like, almost the evil part of the movie, but when we see her in The Woman, we feel sympathetic towards her. If you would go into another direction, would you want to go in the same direction as sympathetic or in a more villain type manner?
Ooh, it's a good question. I don't know if I should spill all the beans right now, Stacey.
It's all right. It's all right. You don't have to. I can go forward to the next question, though.
I'll say this. I mean, it's the horror genre, right? So, it's important that we have to have an understanding and a basis as to why she becomes what she is, right?
Right.
Moving forward, I think it's safe to say she's certainly got enough fodder to be, to continue to be a badass and somebody who's got, some issues she's going to work out, right? I mean, she definitely. So the point is, I think she's going to continue to. I could see her kicking some ass, and definitely, you know, she's she's not going to be an airplane stewardess in the next film.
That would be a twist.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Soul Plane 2.
It's awesome.
And then for Sundance, I know you mentioned about going back. Are you excited to go back? And the guy, I think everybody knows about the guy that kind of outburst at Sundance, which honestly I didn't know anything about till after I watched The Woman, and I was kind of like, really? Like that's the movie that really set this guy off. But are you looking forward to that?
It's underground.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah, no, I am. We haven't gotten in yet. But we anticipate, knock on wood, that we'll hopefully get into Sundance or Slam Dance with the new film Jugface, and I am looking forward to going back. I think Jugface is definitely it's a different movie than The Woman, obviously, and I think it's a little more I don't want to say less provocative, but it's a little more on the science fiction end of things a little bit. There's a little bit of that, there's essentially creature pit, right? These people sacrifice themselves to, and so there's this whole kind of culty thing going on there, and so I think again, I think it'll be provocative, but I think it's a little bit more of a broader audience. It's almost like if you took Winter's Bone and did it in the horror genre. That's kind of where Jugface goes. And so there's a supernatural element there that's interesting, I think, that obviously allows for certain people to suspend their disbelief a little easier than our buddy who got up and started screaming at Lucky at the end of the film.
I thought that was an awesome video, though.
Oh yeah, no, it was...
I don't know. People overreacting about that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a movie. What did you expect? I don't know. I get kind of pissed off at people that overreact to that kind of shit.
Doors aren't locked on the theater. Like, you can leave.
You're right.
Exactly.
So, what is so basically the future for Moderncine is we have Jugface, and then we have a couple other things that are in the works. Is there anything else that you planned on working on in the near future?
I enjoyed Black Butterflies. Was a blast. This director Brian Avenay Bradley, who I've worked, who I've been friends with for years. I met him actually in North Carolina at the Durham film festival, Nevermore Film Festival, and he had screened a movie called Dark Remains. I loved the movie, and I introduced him to someone who ended up selling it for him. And then I said, stayed in touch with him over the years and said, hey, when you get ready to do your next feature, let's talk. And so basically this last summer he did his next feature, and I came on with Moderncine and we executive produced it. And the movie it's in editorial, it's in post right now. And Brad Dourif is actually in the film. He plays the bad guy in the movie, which is so perfect. And it's a fun movie. A little different too than anything we've done before. Again, it's definitely, I think, a little more broad of an audience. Again, like we were talking about Ketchum earlier today, and I think one of the great things about Ketchum is it really helped us identify our company as a company that's not worried about going there and doing really edgy horror. But also on the reverse side of that, it made me realize, having done so many Ketchum projects now, well, look, even if we continue The Woman, I want to make films for larger audiences, and I want to make films that are even more accessible, and then always find a way to kind of bring in, the core elements of what we do so well at Moderncine.
Right.
And so I think moving forward, you're going to see a really diverse group of films that the company's associated with, and I think it's going to be cool. I think we're going to see the company grow. I think we're going to hopefully get, projects that get larger. Even, we've had great distribution so far, but, I'd love to see our movies end up on 3,000 screens, and I think in order to do that, we're going to have to balance out, some of the content that we've been dealing with and find a way to kind of reach the mainstream, but also not jeopardize or compromise in terms of our integrity when it comes to making the films in the genre. And I think you can make a film that goes out wide. I mean, I enjoyed Cabin Fever when it came out. Obviously, Eli did Hostel, and there's a handful of great movies that are out there. I think the torture porn era is kind of played out a little bit at this point, So not my, and they really aren't my favorite kind of movies. I think it made sense for The Woman just because it was such a great starting point for that character, and it gives her so much fuel to move forward now, into
right.
every movie, if she is that badass villain that Stacey is probably hoping. I mean, I don't know. Do you enjoy the sympathetic character, Stacey? I'm actually curious. I wanted to ask you that question when you said that.
Honestly, I love the badass character. I love the badass aspect of her. She's somebody that I guess I wish I could be.
Yeah.
But that's what I do enjoy. But at the same time, feeling that sympathy towards her makes you like her even more.
I was gonna say both is always kind of the answer for me. I like to have, especially if it's a woman for some reason. Any woman, if she's a badass and she's doing these awful things, but you still feel sympathetic to her, that's like kind of a turn you've taken that's kind of hard to do in movies. I think the only other time that I've seen that besides this movie was I think Devil's Rejects. Like if you've seen the first movie, The House Thousand Corpses, these are these awful people doing these terrible things. But then in Devil's Rejects, they're getting like tortured and stuff, and I felt bad for them the entire movie. I'm like, wait a minute, they're the bad guys.
Yeah, I agree. I think you guys are right, and I think you need to see her as a badass, but I think you should also relate to her because I mean, obviously, when we see, like Jason or Freddy, any of the male kind of horror icons, it's like they're just fucking evil. You don't you're just scared of them. They're
Right.
fucking evil. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's so cool about playing with a female horror icon. It's like why can't she be a badass and still be likable? And I think that's not to say Jason's not likable, but I'm saying to be able to really on a human level, like say, hey, I understand her and I kind of like her, and Jesus Christ, I wouldn't want to fucking piss her off,
Jason's never done anything where you're like, oh, I feel bad for him. Like, I mean,
Right.
yeah, he came back to life, but he's basically just a gigantic zombie. I mean, he's not even he's not even human anymore. But yeah, in the woman, you definitely feel stuff for her, and then towards the end, she really lets you know not to fuck with her anymore.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I'm psyched. I mean, again, like, I think, the more sympathetic she is, but also a badass she is, I think people are going to relate to her more too, and it's not going to be like, oh, we've seen that before. I think that's what's so exciting about it. Obviously, I think what limits the woman in terms of the, commercial success of that film beyond where it has been, which has been incredibly successful kind of in the genre, obviously, is I think the torture porn elements of it kind of, so extensive, again, I mean, it just pushes the envelope in such a way. But again, we needed that movie to get it to where it's going to go, and so it'll be interesting to see where we go with it for sure.
So do you have anything else, Chasey? Oh, Stacey. I said Chasey. Jesus. I think I had a stroke a couple weeks ago. I haven't been able to talk.
It's all right. It's all right. The only other question I had was at conventions. Have you guys ever thought about having like tables or anything at any of the conventions? I know you've been down to Texas Frightmare.
Yeah, dude. I mean, honestly, like it's a time thing, right? Lucky and I have just been so busy working on the new film and constantly working. It's like it's hard to find the time to actually like do conventions and commit to the circuit, at this point. But I think after the new movie comes out, we'll probably do a few conventions for sure. And I enjoy it, man. Maybe you guys should, head up the whole convention circuit for Moderncine, and we should just put you guys on the road.
Oh, we'll do it.
Totally would.
Don't tempt us. Because we love conventions. I mean, there's nothing better than being able to go somewhere. Because normally in the horror movie community, when you're as big as a horror fan as we are, because we're like creepy horror fans, I guess, because we know so much about it, and it's our life. When we go to horror conventions, we're around our people. It's like extended family now. It's like I don't care who you are, I'll talk to you. And we get looked at weird everywhere else. I live in a small town in South Carolina. I don't get looked at right for wearing a Suspiria shirt or a Motel Hell shirt.
Yeah, isn't it funny too how like face of the planet too, like
Right.
Yeah.
kind of ironic. We're also demented in certain ways, but then when it comes to like just hanging out and having a good time, we're like the nicest people. At least
Right.
that's my experience. So
Yeah, and it's like we've talked to a couple other people about being on our show, and everyone has been incredibly nice. And people are like, "How are you getting them?" I'm like, "Does it hurt to ask?" I mean, the worst they could say is, "No, I don't have time." But everyone's been really nice.
yeah, no, and if you really are truly fans, which you are, you can, it's like we appreciate it that much more too, because it's like we're spending hours geeking out, nerding out, like how do we make interesting movies? How do we tell stories that are fucking groundbreaking? Like, I remember when I saw Mike's audition in Boston, I was like, oh my God, there was like 3 people in the theater. I'm like, am I the only one who like appreciates this film?
Well, the last thing we like to do on our show is we want to do something called the PSYCOW 7, where we ask 7 questions. We ask them every show. The first one being, what decade of horror is your favorite? When was horror at its apex for you?
Yeah. No, I definitely think 70s for sure.
I love you.
Me too.
That was it. That was the time for horror movies.
Definitely.
What's your take on horror movies today, like the reboots and the remakes? Do you find them awesome or kind of more, that doesn't really need to be remade?
It's crazy. It's like, let's think of every great 70s horror movie. Like off the top of my head, like The Exorcist, The Omen, Carrie, Black Christmas, Suspiria, which you guys just mentioned. Like, yeah, dude, they've remade all these films, and you know what sucks is people are not going back and watching the originals. A lot of people, and they're holding on to these remakes. It's kind of like, oh, that's the film,
Right. The new generation of horror fans don't even know that movie was a remake. I'll tell people, don't watch Prom Night. That's an original from the 80s, and that movie's epic, and the new one is terrible. Like, they don't know. They just go to the movies blindly, and they watch whatever they're told to watch.
Right.
Crazy, right? So yeah, so favorite generation and remakes. I think remakes sometimes they work, but by and large, I'm kind of sick of them. Like, can someone come up with let's let people come up with original ideas in the genre. It's about time.
I
agree with that.
I got a bunch. But what's your favorite film you've done so far?
Favorite film that I've done in terms of
you've been involved with? Like, what movie have you been involved with that was your favorite working with?
Such a tough question. I mean, The Woman was an amazing experience. The film turned out amazingly well. I did called In the Family was probably the smoothest and best production I've ever been involved with.
Okay.
And do you guys know anything about In the Family? We haven't even talked about that at all.
No, I haven't.
No.
I've never even seen that one.
So Roger Ebert gave this film 4 stars that I made this year called In the Family. And it's completely outside of the genre. It's a totally it was a passion project because one of my friends wrote it, directed it. I convinced him to star in it, and he produced it with me. And it went on to be nominated for a Spirit Award this year, and then got 4 stars from Roger Ebert. No one picked up the movie because it was like 2 hours and like 40 minutes long.
Right.
It literally, we self-distributed it, and it's been in over 80 cities now theatrically. And the film, it's a really impactful and timely film. It deals with like the idea of gay marriage and it basically deals with people's prejudice, and it kind of confronts you in a way where you're forced to like a John Cassavetes movie or Ingmar Bergman, film. It forces you to kind of like have to evaluate, well, where are your values in life and what do you think about these issues, And so I don't know, In the Family that production was just such an amazing production because there was such a good group of people coming together to tell that story that was so important. So yeah, it's a random kind of, don't know if the audience on this is really the audience for that film, but I would actually say anybody should go see it because it is an important movie, and I'm proud of it.
Is it available on DVD yet, or is that still in the works?
Still in theaters, but it's going to be coming out. New Yorker Films is going to put it out on DVD and Blu-ray next year, and it'll be on video on demand. It'll be on iTunes. So yeah, In the Family will definitely be coming out next year. And again, like, you guys watch Rising Stars, which I was actually quite surprised about. So you guys might actually dig the film. It's pretty badass film, and Patrick Wang he's a super talented dude, and talk about a brave guy going out financing the movie himself and doing the movie he wanted the way. Do it. There's less than 300 cuts in the film, and it's 2 hours and 45 minutes long. It's insane.
Wow.
Well, I mean, I love every movie. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, I'll watch it. I'll watch anything once, and my taste for horror movies is huge. But I mean, I watch pretty much anything and enjoy it. So I mean, it doesn't. There's not really one genre that I don't really like to watch, except I can't really think of one actually.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I secretly like The Notebook, if that says anything about me at all.
Well, yeah, I have a soft spot in my heart for the movie Mean Girls, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
What's the scariest movie of all time?
I mean, The Exorcist really fucked my head up. I'm not gonna lie.
I think that did to everybody.
Yeah,
Pretty,
that's
pretty high on the list.
yeah.
Okay, and worst movie monster. Like the worst movie monster you've ever seen.
I mean, it's probably every trauma film.
That's a perfect answer.
The best movies in the past 5 years. Which one is your favorite? Outside of what you've done.
Ooh, the past 5 years. That's a good question. Outside of movies that I've done, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm not. You see, it's so funny because all the commercial genre films, so not a fan of. Like Paranormal Activity, just do not do it for me.
Right.
So, I'd have to lean towards probably. I'm trying to think of genre movies in the last 5 years that I'm absolutely obsessed with. Um, yeah, and it's funny because it's like as much as I to like Hobo with a Shotgun in again, that doesn't, Rucker Hauer kicking ass is amazing and everything. Tough, man. It's a tough question.
That is a good movie.
Yoshihiro Nishimuro's made some really cool films. Tokyo Gore Police is kind of cool.
Yep.
I love the Korean filmmaking. I like Three Extremes. I thought that was really good.
Both of them are on Netflix, and I was surprised.
Really?
They're really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Dumplings was probably one of the most haunting.
I know.
It's just so disgusting and disturbing, but
yeah.
well done. And just the way the whole complex is shot, where the woman who's making the dumplings is living in,
Right.
it feels so cold, What else? So yeah, I mean, those are definitely films that I dig. I think it's definitely the indie horror stuff. I like that, and the foreign genre stuff as well. What else did I really dig in the last 5 years? Yeah, it's tough because I'm so many shitty remakes. There's not a lot of good original genre content getting made these days.
Well, see, with what you just said, I mean, just all of your favorites are foreign. I mean, that just shows what America's really producing. The last question is my favorite. It's what's one thing that you've learned not to do in real life from horror movies? Like, I don't ever go caving.
Said that movie actually just is probably one of my favorite horror movies, but I don't think that came out in the last 5 years, did it? Was it? I think that was like maybe.
Yeah, I think
That's
that was
older,
in 06, yeah.
So I would say I probably would, I wouldn't walk down. Yeah, I wouldn't go caving. That's a good one, but I wouldn't. I honestly wouldn't walk into a mental institution alone.
Yes. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for being on our show, and I know we took up a lot of your time. We appreciate you coming on.
Awesome, guys. All right, good luck. I'll talk to you soon. Nightmare on Elm Street, like all of the, and then right up until Scream came out, like I was always into those films. I think Cronenberg definitely had the biggest influence on me.
Yeah.
I've always been into very traditional effects as much as possible.
Right.
And so I think his stories are they're interesting, right? He has all kinds of. I mean, Wes Craven does the same thing where I think you can read into like what the genre, it goes beyond the genre in terms of the subtext of what they're trying to deal with. And I kind of really dig that the horror genre has such a, multiple angled kind of, meaning to so many of the movies that we watch. And at the end of the day, I really do like to just be scared when I watch a horror movie. I love suspense too. I think suspense is awesome. Hitchcock, the master of suspense.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
When you say Cronenberg, I mean, he has every element of horror in everything he does. I mean, every movie he does is completely different than the last one.
Absolutely. Even History of Violence,
Yep. With Videodrome and Scanners and his remake of The Fly, I mean, everything was completely different than everything else.
Totally.
So, do you like producing or directing more?
It's funny. I'm a natural born producer, so I love producing because it's kind of like my strong suit. But directing is the kind of thing where I challenge myself, and it forces me to have to really like be 110% creative all the time.
Right.
So I enjoy producing because that's kind of, again, where I get to work on a lot of projects and with a lot of different directors and creative people. Where when I direct, I really have to just focus on one project at a time. And I think the more projects I'm doing, I'm realizing that I really do enjoy working with a diverse group of directors. And I get what it takes to make a director happy and what it takes to actually make a film work. More epic the more you cut certain things out, and you just become more disturbed seeing less. However, I have to say, like, a big influence on me, I remember being in Florida actually when Silence of the Lambs came out, and we went into the theater, my friend Nick Calico and I, to watch the film with his mom. Took us, actually. It was like a
Yes.
play date on the weekend. I was down with them on a family vacation, and basically his mom, literally 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we're in the theater, she grabs our hands and says, "All right, we're gonna go, guys." It's so funny. And it's like I've always had moments like that. There was another moment when Pulp Fiction was in the theaters, Tarantino's like mass breakthrough films in so many ways. And again, I was in a theater with my mother and at the time my stepfather, and we watched the movie, and I remember them like literally like wishing we hadn't gone into it. They were like, "This is horrible," and I loved it. I was like, "This is amazing."
I don't think there's anything that horrible in that movie besides Gimp.
Yeah. I was probably, it's funny too, because when I was probably about 10 or 11 years old when, maybe I was, probably around that age when we went and saw it. And, it was one of those movies, like now I guess 10 and 11-year-olds are seeing a lot more crazy films. But back in the day, when they took me to see that movie, it was still in the time where it was like not acceptable to see certain kinds of films. So,
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch horror movies until I was really, probably early teenager, but she let me watch Halloween every Halloween, and that kind of got me going with horror movies.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, Friday the 13th and then seeing Halloween, obviously seeing like, seeing, enjoy producing, but I love directing when I find the right material. I think as I get older, I'm realizing that, again, the producing is definitely where I'm able to do a lot more, and I've been enjoying that.
I saw The Woman first, and when I went back to watch The Offspring, it's a very different movie, but it's it's really amazing. It's probably it's my second favorite modern cinema movies. Not just because of The Woman, but just because of who is. I don't know. It's just the way it was done. I just love it.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I wanted to get a real raw feeling with that film, and not like I wanted to feel kind of like a throwback to the '70s kinds of
It's the best decade.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Diodato's Cannibal Holocaust, all those films that came out in the '70s were just so gritty, and I tried to find a way to work with children and work with all the subject matter that was kind of taboo and weave it into something that, is being made contemporary, but still has that kind of that grit to it. And Michigan was just a great place to kind of grab that timeless feel,
Oh, the way I saw The Woman was kind of like an I Spit on Your Grave, but she's feral. She's not just a an attractive woman living in a house. She was out in the woods, and it's kind of, to me, it was kind of like that. It was because I Spit on Your Grave is probably one of the best horror movies ever, especially in the '70s, and it seemed like a real cool throwback to all the '70s movies, like you said. In Rising Stars, we watched everything you've done, and I want to ask one quick question about that movie. Who did your hair in Rising Stars?
Oh, geez, man. I think I had gotten really drunk the night before and woke up and just walked to set with that hairdo. I
loved it.
Amazing. It's perfect.
I was like... Welcome to PSYCOW, home of all things horror. I'm Kyle.
I'm Stacey, and we have a very special guest today, Mr. Andrew Houten, president of Moderncine.
What is going on, guys?
We're super stoked to have you on the show.
We are. This is a pretty amazing moment for all of us right now.
I mean, you know how big of a horror fan we are, especially for you and the woman, and I mean, we got inked for this.
Yes. I'm set up for December, but it's going to happen.
I'm completely geeked out, man. Like when I found out that I had two fans that were fans of our movies and what we do, who are like so into the iconoclasm of that woman character and just committing to it on flesh, I knew that this was going to happen, where we could all talk one day on the phone and soon to meet, hopefully, as well.
Yes.
That would be amazing.
We actually talked about it. We have to, we just added Stacey into our little PSYCOW universe of podcasting. We have like 6 different shows. We have to do like a investor ski trip. You should come.
I'm into it. I love it. I think it would be appropriate, you know, God willing, everything works out. We can go to Park City this year with one of our films. It would be cool to see you guys out there and have a couple drinks.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Love to. Yes.
So let's jump down into questions, and I want to interview. It's gonna be fun.
Let's do it.
You want to start off, Stacey?
Sure. We have a list going on, and how much we actually cover of that list might be a little crazy, but we're going to try our best. So our first question was, what attracted you to cinema, and what films do you credit for your influence?
You know, it's a good question. I think for me, I've always been a fan of. It's funny, when I was a kid growing up, I was such a geek when it came to action movies, and I always got really super psyched about watching, Terminator and anything that was like, big studio action film. I was like, Friday nights, where's the action adventure section in the video store? And I would just like jump right into it, whether it was Bruce Willis and Die Hard. And, I was always into action movies. And then I've always had an affinity for the horror genre, because I was like, every time Halloween would come around, there'd be like the edited versions of like Friday the 13th on like television. And it would just be like just disturbing enough where you'd be like, oh my God, this is crazy. And you'd be hiding under your mother's like sheets.
There's nothing better than edited horror movies.
That's true.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic how horror movies become